It really gets on my nerves when I see conservatives, especially white conservatives, say some of the most outlandish things when it comes to comparing the plight of thug-in-chief Donald Trump to the revered veterans of the Black Freedom Movement, also known as the Civil Rights Movement. Newt Gingrich, the disgraced former Speaker of the House, who should not give anybody any marital advice whatsoever, was on Fox News, and this idiot actually said this.
I think in terms of the court, something that Speaker Mike Johnson said really struck home with me when he said about the decision on whether or not to help Israel and Ukraine, that this is not a game. Let me tell you, I am deeply worried that tomorrow a totally corrupt judge and a totally corrupt district attorney are going to try to put a former president of the United States, candidate of his party, and front runner in the polls in jail. Now, I think this is so horrendous that there has to be some way to reach out to the Supreme Court. I mean, this is literally like some of the civil rights workers in Mississippi in the 1960s. The New York system is now so deeply corrupted, and it is so bitterly, deeply anti-Trump. The absurdity of the judge's daughter, who made millions and millions of dollars doing anti-Trump politics, and the judge would like us to believe, much like Joe Biden, he had no idea what his children were doing. I mean, the whole thing, frankly, resembles On the Waterfront, Stanley Kubrick's brilliant film. This is about corruption. It has nothing to do with honesty. And what worries me is it's a genuine threat to Donald Trump. I mean, I think any step that would put him close to a New York prison is an extraordinarily dangerous step. And I would hope that there's some legal way to block it and make sure that it never happens, because the thugs he's dealing with are totally out of control, have total contempt for the rule of law, and frankly are unworthy of being in the offices they hold.
Newt Gingrich literally sat on Fox News with a straight face and compared what this rich, privileged, demon-possessed individual, Donald Trump, is dealing with in a New York City courtroom is akin to what civil rights workers went through in some of the most brutal conditions of racial hatred in American history. Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman were beaten, shot to death, mutilated, bodies disposed. What's crazy is that when the FBI was searching for their bodies, they uncovered other bodies of folks who had been disposed of. When we start talking about the homes of Black people that were blown up in Florida, in Mississippi, in Alabama, numerous places, when we talk about folks who were brutalized, who were sodomized, who were sexually assaulted, who were lynched, who had their private parts cut off, you actually have the audacity to crap on their legacy by comparing them to this charlatan who comes to court in a blue suit and a long-ass red tie, who comes in with Secret Service protection, who goes and sleeps in his 10,000 square foot home, who travels to Florida on his private plane to Mar-a-Lago to pal around with a bunch of other rich-ass folks and celebrate giving them tax breaks? You, Newt Gingrich, a so-called historian, literally goes on Fox News and tries to compare with this shameless individual who paid off a porn star who he cheated on with against his wife, had his attorney Michael Cohen make the payments, a man who has lied, who has cheated on his taxes, who tried to overturn an election, who continues to lie about the election, and you have the audacity to compare him to black civil rights workers and white folks of conscience around the country who are fighting for the right to vote. Black people who were prevented from being a part of the Democratic delegation at Atlantic City in 1964. The folks who were shut out of public office all across Mississippi. The people who were condemned, who were chastised, who had their crops destroyed. Folks who were thrown in jail. When you talk about some of the most heinous things, when you had black young folks put in parchment prison, when you had a young black woman who was viciously beaten so bad, her face was double the size of her face normally. Her eyes were almost coming out of her head. Her lip was busted, and all she could simply say was freedom. When they sang songs in jails, when they came up missing, when parents prayed that their kids would come home every single night out of fear, they would run into Klansmen. You, Newt Gingrich, you have the audacity to invoke those people. Shame on your punk ass for having the gall to raise that. Of all the things that black folks have done in this country, putting lives on the line, and this sorry, no good son of a bitch who couldn't even go to the war because he faked so-called bone spurs in his feet. The man who has shamed POWs, the man who has spit on the folks who have died, according to his former chief of staff, John Kelly, when he wouldn't even go to their graves. You literally raised that. When Army veteran Medgar Evers was shot and killed, assassinated, getting out of his car, and he died on his doorstep with his wife and children, yelling and screaming, and it was Byron Della Beckwith who actually did it, you literally said that crap? Oh, hell no. There's no way in the world I could sit here as a conscious black man and allow you, Newt Gingrich, a truly pathetic individual, to invoke those people. They are American heroes. They are American sheroes. They are the individuals who made this country truly live up to, as Dr. King said, be true to what you put on paper. And you are not going to sit there on Fox News and make that type of comment and invoke their name and their fight and their legacy to compare it to this, yes, son of a bitch, Donald Trump. Because that's exactly what he is. That man has no morals, no values, no principles, no ethics. He stands for nothing. He fights for nobody. He only cares about himself. And you sit here and actually say somebody need to call the Supreme Court to put a stop to this? I thought y'all cared about law and order. I thought y'all cared about what's right. Y'all sure as hell kept wanting to put Hillary Clinton in jail. But I hope everybody now understands what we're dealing with. So all y'all folk out there who are like, hey, you know what? I kind of like Trump. When DJ Academic sits there and interviews Donald Trump Jr. and talks about, oh, I like how he talks tough. That man don't give a damn about you or nobody else. And Newt Gingrich, you say that? Nah. You are not going to even remotely associate those heroes with this gutless piece of crap. And that's who Donald Trump is. Mustafa.
You know, Donald Trump is devoid of light. it's like a black hole that continues to pull everything because its gravitational pull becomes stronger and stronger and stronger because it's feeding on the energy around him. And for Newt Gingrich, who has been around for a long time and who has actually seen talented individuals who may have been in the Republican Party, to continue to uplift this individual who, as you said, cares about no one, speaks volumes about where their party currently is and how if they don't begin to address it, that it will continue to unravel this country. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with being supportive of a party if it is not doing things to deconstruct, to bring havoc, to actually put people's lives in danger. You know, Donald Trump has never had to sacrifice for anything, but has sacrificed many individuals for his own personal gains. And for Newt Gingrich to continue to feed into this, once again, speaks to how the particular party at the moment's moral compass is broken at best, or no longer has any moral value to add to this democratic thing that we are trying to figure out how we get it right. So, you know, I hope folks will educate themselves, and I hope that they will begin to actually look for individuals who are focused on trying to uplift our country, who are trying to make sure that those who have never had a voice now have a voice, and try and make sure that we're creating something better for our children and our children's children. But by the current sets of activities they're doing, they're falling short at best.
Donald Trump has absolutely no redeeming value whatsoever, Joy, not one. And the reason this even ticks me off, because when I talk about the black civil rights workers, when you talk about Fannie Lou Hamer, when you talk about Bob Moses, when you talk about all these individuals, it's not just black people. It's so many other folk who put their lives on the line, who actually were willing to stand up and fight to end Jim Crow, to end segregation in this country. And so this so-called fight Donald Trump is in, paying off a porn star, you can't even remotely compare that to the battle against Jim Crow. Go to my iPad, Henry. This is a white man, y'all, who on this day in 1963, his name is William Moore. He was from Mississippi, but he had moved to Baltimore. He was found dead, as you see right here. This is from the Equal Justice Institute. On April 23rd, 1963, William L. Moore was found dead on U.S. Highway 11 near Attala, Alabama, 4 days shy of his 36th birthday. He was a white man in the midst of a one-man civil rights march to Jackson, Mississippi, to implore Mississippi Governor Ross Barnett to support integration efforts. He wore signs that read, "End segregation in America, eat at Joe's, both black and white, and equal rights for all, Mississippi or bust." He was a resident of Baltimore, a member of the Congress of Racial Equality. On his first protest, he walked to Annapolis, Maryland from Baltimore. On his second march, he walked to the White House. For what proved to be his final march, he planned his walk from Chattanooga, Tennessee to Jackson. Donald Trump, nowhere, anyway, anyhow, Joy, should ever be mentioned in the same breath as this courageous white man, William Moore.
That's right. And keep in mind, Newt Gingrich was an older man. So he's not talking about a bygone era that he doesn't remember. He was a contemporary of some of these civil rights leaders, champions, people who marched, or who was immediately their junior, right? Immediately the inheritor of that generation. And while he often tries to erase it from his resume, he started off as a Rockefeller Republican, right? A more moderate Republican, the era that we don't even think about now. Mr. Rockefeller would be appalled at who he has become, and would have known at that time, as the young Newt knew at that time, that Donald Trump and anyone in his league, including the current version of Newt Gingrich, are not fit to utter the names across their lips of any of the people who died, who fought, who bled, who cried during the civil rights movement. He ought to be ashamed of himself.
John Quayle, he's from Georgia. He knows better. Now, if he wants to look like a fool and go defend Donald Trump, I don't care. You can do whatever. But what you're not going to do is invoke civil rights workers in Mississippi in the 60s, and nobody say a thing?
Listen, that was another difficult thing to watch, right? Because the civil rights movement, you know, Donald Trump has, during the course of his campaign, has made references about why the blacks support him, right? Is because he is facing discrimination by all of these lawsuits. However, the civil rights movement, we were fighting for basic humane rights, right? The ability to walk in the front of a restaurant, the ability to be able to sit and eat at a restaurant with people that look diverse to us, right? The ability to attend universities, to be a part of anything, right? To be able to do, we were fighting to be able to do anything, to even be able to drink from the same water fountain as someone else, right? And amongst others, you know, you have Emmett Till, which was a teenager that was castrated and dragged by vehicles. And so, you know, it's very difficult to watch. It's very insulting to even make that comparison. For the two shouldn't even be in the same sentence, because you're comparing someone who is privileged and someone who has committed crimes, allegedly, right, until he's found guilty. And he's going through the criminal justice system like everyone else that commits crimes. But you can't compare these crimes that he is being prosecuted for with us fighting for basic human rights. There's nothing similar.
Nothing.
And frankly, you know, the fact that there are any types of mentions that Black people support him because of the discrimination that he's facing is, it's a horrific thing to even have to listen to or to watch.
Oh, well, actually, it's insane.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.